Hey, welcome to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute with your host, the alchemist of Indiana's Black Forest, Alan Bishop. Hey, this channel is all about home distilling and legal distilling. If you've got questions, reach out to us in the comments below, social media, or via bishopshomegrown@gmail.com. And don't forget to check out thealchemistcabinet.com. Hey guys, back again. As always, reach out to me, bishopshomegrown@gmail.com, the YouTube comments below, and or social media, also thealchemistcabinet.com, where you can buy all of our stuff, blah, blah, blah. Not going to try to pitch it too hard. I'm going to try to jump right into some questions and some commentary on this particular video. So I've been asked a couple times about how I prepare seasoned oak for aging, maturation, extraction, etc. So not everyone is lucky enough to be able to kind of live in sort of bourbon country where getting hold of oak staves is pretty damn easy, especially seasoned oak staves already seasoned. So maybe I'll kind of walk you a little bit through the process of doing that on your own as well, and what I do as far as actually preparing the oak for that. So first and foremost, the thing that people often forget about oak is that it is super tannic. If you've ever seen a fairly fresh cut oak board and you hit it with some water or you put it outside and let the rain hit it, you'll notice that all this black stuff leaches out of it. And that black stuff is your tannin. Those tannins, some of those tannins, especially in excess, can become pretty nasty when you add them to a whiskey. So this is why we use seasoned oak, and preferably air seasoned oak versus kiln oak, although there are a lot of distilleries out there using barrels made from kilned oak. My preference is always, as much as possible, to stay away from kilned oak. I believe that that's one of those processes that you just can't improve upon what nature does to oak and when it's been seasoned properly outside, the rain, the sun, etc., hitting it, the hot and the cold weather over a period of time. When possible, it's nice to be able to season oak for at least 24 months. I know that there's a lot of places out there that do 6 month, they do 8 month, they do 12 month, they do 18 month, whatever. To me, 24 month at the least is awesome, right? If you can go a little older than that, if you can get up to 36 month, go for it, right? Start getting over that, you're probably going to start to have some fungal issues growing in the wood, etc., that are probably going to affect the flavor of your wood. So the easy way to actually season oak at home is if you've got a way to get a hold of some good white oak, or any of the various different types of oak out there that might be used for barrels or barrel maturation or even extraction, like you might do with a ultrasonic cleaner. You take that stuff and obviously you split it up and you clean it up the best that you can. You want the heartwood really more than anything else. And if you can allow that stuff to set out in the weather, stack it up in such a way, rick it up in such a way that, you're doing a layer across coming this ways, turn a couple of boards the opposite direction and layer again, and back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. So you get good air flow through there. And every few months, go through and unstack it and restack it back up and let it season out of its own accord that way over a few years. It's important to keep it up off the ground as well. So if you got concrete or something like that, or a place where you can keep it where it's not going to be in touch directly with the soil itself, that's ideal, because that soil is going to have a lot of microbes in it that are going to cause rot to happen. And after you get through that time period and you've got good oak, or if you can just start with good oak to begin with, everything from there is very, very easy. So short of any dirt that might be on the outside of that particular oak, because bearing in mind, you're probably not making a barrel out of it, but you're going to use it as an extraction mechanism, and just knock the dust off of it, knock the dirt off of it, whatever might be there visible to you. And from there, there's a few things you can do. You can either toast that. I'm not going to get into times and temperatures and stuff with your home ovens. You can look that stuff up on the internet, but everybody's home oven is different, and I'm not inclined to give you a temperature that might cause you a problem in your home oven, if you know what I'm saying. So you can look into that, different temperatures, different degrees of temperature for the different types of toast that you want. The way that I char is typically with MAP gas, because it's what I have on hand, although this can be done with oak itself as well. One of the cooperages I absolutely love is Kelvin Cooperage, and one of the reasons why I love them is they often air season for 24 months, and they are one of the very few cooperages, and well, actually the only major cooperage in the US that I know of that still fires their barrels with the leftover oak, right? Build a fire inside that barrel, get the toast level that you want, the char level that you want, all in one go. Ideally, what you want is to toast everything first and then to char it, because again, the char is really just there as a filtration device for things that come over in a distillation that you don't necessarily want in an aged product, but you need to have there for esterification over time. And the toast is where all the sugars are at. So having that toast underneath that char is super important in my opinion. When I'm charring, I just do it visually. I don't get real scientific about it. I often just take a stave and I'll lay it down on a brick that I have in my cellar. And then I hit it with MAP gas on all sides until it approaches the level of char that I want. The level of char being determined by the amount of cracking, the sort of alligator effect. So wild turkey is famous for, excuse me, quote unquote, alligator char, very heavy char, number 4 char. So I typically will go for a number 2 char more than anything else in a medium plus toast. Sometimes I will even try to do some toasting with the MAP gas, which you can do, but you have to be a little more careful with, and it doesn't go very deep, unfortunately, when you toast that way. But I might just toast, like, you know, if I'm using a cube of oak, all 4 sides. If I'm using a cube, I'll toast all 4 sides on the going around, and then both the larger surface areas I will char most often. So that's kind of just my methodology, and you can go and look at various pictures that are on Google that will show you what the different char levels look like, what temperatures they get to, what you're looking for, etc. The reason I go with that 2 char is because it leaves behind more lignin and more cellulosic material, and so I get a lot more sort of toasted coconut, toasted hazelnut sort of aromas and flavors out of that. And since I typically do a lot of lower proof entry into either barrels or even with maceration, I tend to like that because water is a better solvent on that than what ethanol is. So I get more extraction more quickly that way. And it seems to be more balanced, especially when I have that medium plus toast and that number 2 char. I'm also making good cuts coming off the pot stills here. So I don't really need that heavy 3 or 4 char. Now, if you're a big fan of that traditional Kentucky style column still bourbon, you're definitely going to want a heavier char than what I typically use. So it's worthwhile to get online and see what all of those look like, without a doubt. So the next question had to do with overcooking grains during the mash process with regards to the amount of time held at specific temperatures. So and I think I know what they're getting at. This was a follow-up question, or a follow-up response that they sent to me to remind me to answer this question. I can't find the original response or the original question to begin with, but I think what they're getting at is the various temperatures that you use to hold your grains at different times and how long you hold it, and can you overcook those grains or get too hot with those grains, etc. So with corn, and I think most of you probably know this, corn takes a very high boiling point to start to break down and open it up and get it dissolved into the water. It takes a very high temperature. You know, most distilleries are using 190. Some are going up to 212. Usually I'm at 190 for 1 hour, but I would see no problem with going to 212 for however damn long you want to go. You're not going to hurt that corn, in my opinion. In fact, with some of the flint corns, in particular the harder type corns, with very expressive colors, you're probably better off to go to that 212 and hold for maybe even an hour and a half, because you're then freeing more and more of those amino acids that are going to become flavor and aroma precursors during fermentation and distillation. When it comes to wheat and rye and oats and things of that nature, you ask any distiller in the industry and they're all going to have their preferred range as to where they think they need to be in for how long. A lot of guys are somewhere in the 170 range for 30 to 45 minutes. I'm going to be honest with you, at work, I actually add my rye and my wheat and my oats all at the same time I add my corn. It all goes to 190 and it all gets held for an hour. Now, sometimes if I'm doing just oat whiskey, because it doesn't need that, if it's 100% oat whiskey, I go in at about 160 degrees for about 30 minutes typically, but I'm also using a ton of exogenous enzymes to get my conversion factor going on there. I have tried it many different ways at many different temperatures. You know, there's guys that'll talk about rye and, oh, rye doesn't foam as bad if it's held at this temperature for this amount of time versus that temperature for that amount of time. You don't get as much of the brand flavor out of it if you hold it this temperature for this. I've never seen a difference. I've tried it many, many ways, and I have seen no difference as far as the efficiency goes for me on an industrial scale. Now, at home, could probably be a little bit more picky because you'll be more efficient by not having to go to as high of a temperature or hold at that temperature for as long. if you're playing with rye or wheat or oats, more than likely. So it's probably worthwhile to look at that. I think 170 for 30 or 45 minutes on rye and wheat is probably more than enough. In the 160s on oats is probably, you know, for an hour at most, is probably more than enough. I don't think you're going to overcook it. I don't think you're going to get odd flavors out of it. I have noticed that wheat in particular can change a little bit year to year, even within variety and even on the farm. The flavor of the brand in particular, some years becomes much, much more extreme than in other years. And I've certainly noticed that with my wheated bourbon at Spirits of French Lick. You know, this past year, the whiskey that we released this past year, the William Dalton bourbon, was much, much more tannic than it had been in the past. And it's not a barrel thing. It was definitely a wheat issue related to the growing season, etc. So, hope that kind of answered your questions there, guys. And as always, thanks for following me. And please like, subscribe, and share. And let's drive more and more people to the One Piece at a Time Distilling Institute. Love y'all. Later.